All right.
How you guys doing? Good?
Good. I think we're live now, so I think we can start it off.
Awesome.
Um, good evening, everybody. I'm honored to be here today, with these two prominent leaders in the city of Annapolis. During these unprecedented times, we have witnessed so much change. Change leads to questions that need answers. And that is why we are here today. Before we get started, I would like to introduce myself. My name is Lloyd III. I'm an Annapolis native, and I'm also the president of the Anne Arundel County NAACP chapter, Youth and College Division. Second, I would like to help to introduce my co-host, an exceptional young leader who has been making substantial change in his community, Akil. Can you give us a brief description of who you are and how much change you made in your community and how significant you are?
Yes. My name is Akil Leggett Jr. I'm a freshman at Annapolis High School, and I'm also the president of the class of 2024 at Annapolis High School. And at Annapolis Middle School, I was the SGA president, where the SGA collectively as a team, we helped raise money to change the water fountains within our school. We raised enough money to change 2 water fountains in our school, and that was my biggest achievement so far.
I know that you have a lot ahead of you, young brother. Last but not least, I would like to introduce the mayor of the greatest city in America, Gavin Buckley. Can you also give a brief description for the people?
I'm Mayor Buckley. How you all doing? Excited to be here tonight with some very powerful young people who are going to change this city and change this world. I've always believed that young people are the future. And so I'm not so young anymore, but I'm still a little kid at heart. And I'm really happy to sort of be part of this process and help move the city forward with you guys.
Thank you. Appreciate that. So with that being said, today we'll be having a question and answer discussion with youth, Akil and myself. We gathered a lot of questions from our peers and other individuals who live in Annapolis. And we're pretty much just allowing the mayor to, answer them as we have some dialogue as well. So I'm going to jump right into it with the first question. So the pandemic has highlighted the disparities in jobs, unemployment, education, and healthcare in minorities and underserved communities. What can your office do to help mitigate these disparities that have had a serious impact on the children and the youth?
I would say that as soon as the pandemic hit, that we realized that our marginalized communities, people that are not as lucky as some of us guys here, were going to be hit the hardest. They had the least resources, and many of them were in the sort of low-paying jobs that were going to be displaced as soon as the shutdown happened. So what we did as a city is that we made sure that we reached out to the communities and the businesses early on, and we ran a response on a parallel track. We first, on the health track, we made sure that we were pushing for mass testing in the city. We took testing into the communities. Some communities didn't have the resources to drive out to the health department or to another place where tests were available. We were the first, one of the first communities to do the mobile testing and bring that into the communities and make sure that resource was available and reliable and there, regularly on a Monday. So the big thing about COVID is it is the big equalizer. It doesn't discriminate. You can be old or young, black, white, Latino, rich or poor. You are just as susceptible as anyone else, and we knew that, and so we made sure that we were putting resources into food drives. We set up a food pantry at Pip Moyer. We made sure that we were supporting the businesses that could stay open and keep people employed. Because if you have to choose between exposing yourself to COVID and feeding your family, what do you think you're going to do? You're going to take the risk because you can't stand between a family and their kids. So we made sure that we tried to keep the businesses and the wheels rolling for businesses in this town when it was safe. We reached out to our federal partners really early on and said that, you know, we're a state capital. We are experiencing a lot of different things because we're a state capital. We deserve direct funding, and we pushed for that funding. We know we had great lines of communication with our county executive, Stuart Pittman. He is a man with a heart, and we made sure that we were coordinating every day with him and his health department, because the health department in the city is the county's health department. So we made sure we did a lot of outreach early on, and stabilize the city so that we could move forward.
That that was very insightful, especially since when you witness things in like other states and how they're handling the virus, you start to see that a lot of their elected officials have been handling it in a poor manner. It's sad to see because a lot of kids, a lot of families, a lot of elderly are being affected by it. And when you mishandle something like this, it has an impact that will have a shockwave across the whole community. So I do applaud you all for all of the programs that you all have placed for it. The food banks, having mobile testing sites, because a lot of the communities who are normally neglected, they actually had someone that they can call on, and you all did come through on the front line for them. So I do appreciate that.
And Mo,
Akil,
we had a 24-hour hotline immediately open to the public because people were nervous and anxious and they didn't know what it was about. We were just learning as well. None of us expected to be in this position. And I met 7 days a week with all of our department heads so that we could get a game plan. And so we continued that for months. And so we were meeting on Saturdays and Sundays. And then we rolled that back as we kind of stabilized a little bit, but keeping that communication and keeping the city open. And that's the one thing about the pandemic is, when there's so much, some people are so unsure and they need to have something constant in their life. So this city and the city employees that worked here really did an amazing job of keeping the wheels turning. We stopped any kind of shutoffs happening, so no one could get their water shut off. No one could get any kind of a nasty bill. We opened the garages, made them free. We made parking free. We tried to do every single thing. If a business had a license, we deferred the payments on it. Anything we could to make it easier on the community. But being able to turn a tap on and know the water is fresh and that the toilets flush and that the garbage is being picked up, that is really essential when there's so much uncertainty. And every one of your city employees showed up for work. No one dialed their job in. They kept the city running, and I'm really proud of the job that they all did.
I appreciate that. And a special shout out to the city employees because they deserve their flowers. Akil, do you have any questions, comments about this particular issue?
Yes, I just wanted to point out, as we were talking about, people who work in the public works or any department within the city of Annapolis, that a majority of the frontline jobs are employed by minorities. And those parents, they have kids. And once those parents go to work those economy driving jobs, they aren't home to be the teacher for their students who is doing virtual learning. So if that person who's in that job, they go to work, now that their older sibling has to take the role as teacher. So not only is the family stressed with getting the parent to work, now the oldest child is stressed with being a teacher and getting their own work done. So I just wanted to point out that a lot of these jobs, they can't be done remotely. And when people think of frontline workers, people automatically think of hospital workers like nurses and doctors. When I say frontline workers, I'm talking about the grocery store cashiers, grocery store workers, public transit workers, anybody who work on hands-on that keeps the economy running. And majority of those jobs are employed by minorities. And I think that's why that we see fall in some grades among minorities. And because it's just the fact that it's a lot of stress. And that moves me to my next question is that, Mr. Mayor, how will you and your office in the future aid students and kids and youth within the city of Annapolis who deal with mental issues?
We could just go back to a little bit of what you just said.
Okay.
We made sure that we opened the Pip Moyer Rec Centre for childcare services so employees could have childcare. We were the only facility open for e-learning. So a lot of parents who had to work, not just for the city, but for anyone in the city, they had the opportunity to use the e-learning centre at the Pip Moyer Rec Centre. And I agree with you. You know, frontline workers don't just mean doctors and nurses. I've seen plenty of, you know, orthopedic surgeons that don't even go near a COVID ward getting vaccinated, like, you know, on the first day. And I say a grocery store worker or a public works guy, a trash collector, a restaurant worker. They're more in the front line and they're more exposed than anyone. But on the mental health stuff, you know, there's going to be a lot of scars from what has just happened, right? That people are not going to just bounce back. Not only, have they been subject to so much uncertainty and things that they never thought would happen to them in their lives. We have to recognize that as a city, it's our obligation to try to help people. So this city brought on its first full-time social worker just a little while ago. We're about to open a resource center in two of our public housing developments in the city, so that on certain days people know they can go to those resource centers and try to get connected to resources. And then the next thing we're working on is a mobile resource center or a wellness van that is going to bring help or resources to the communities at certain times. And so there'll be multiple options for you to go to if you need help or you need somebody to talk to or whatever it is. And if you don't see that, you can call the city and call our ombudsman, and then we will connect you to the resources. The mayor's office has never had the amount of options that it has today, from people getting out of prison, needing resources, from people needing addiction resources, from people needing employment resources. All those things have been a priority for our office. And if I don't have the answer, I'll find the answer for you.
I appreciate that answer. And I also want to add on to that, as far as the virtual learning programs that are going on. I do know that Housing Authority has opened recs, Eastport Rec and Robinwood Rec, so kids can come there and get help, as well as Stanton Center. So I do want to applaud them, as well as Pip Moyer, for helping a lot of our youth during this pandemic. Because in my eyes, they're essential workers as well, because they're stepping up as a role as a guardian, a teacher, a mentor, all three of those. So, they are amazing people.
And Stanton Center is a city as well. And I applaud Hacker for providing that as well. But we didn't get that from the Board of Education, but we did. I do really appreciate the meal service and that point. But it was really city workers and maybe Hacker workers that were stepping up in that time.
All right. I appreciate that. So with that being said, I'll go on to the next question. So how can we utilize all city departments to introduce more summer jobs and internships for the youth in the city of Annapolis? Because, there are a lot of opportunities here, especially with lawmakers, certain type of jobs. So how are we going to, in the future, utilize the summer with these internships to give our youth more opportunities?
We had a very successful internship program last summer in 2020. We still managed to pull that off even with COVID. So we had a number of students, I think it was up to 30 from Annapolis High actually come in and see how municipal government works, and they got to follow different people in different departments. One of the things that I've been really intentional about as a mayor is to make sure that we have minority representation in executive positions. So, if you look at, what our public works director looks like, our city attorney looks like, or whatever, these are guys making a lot of money in their jobs. And then when kids come in from high school, they're like, I could be the police chief, I could be the director of planning and zoning, whatever it is, whatever department. They need to see that it's possible. And we have excellent people. I tell you, I've got such a great team of directors in this city, and they're moving forward. They're making a difference, and they're teaching me things. Like, I need to learn. I didn't grow up in Annapolis. There's so much I need to learn about this town. So, I think good leadership is putting really smart people around you, and learning from them, and they make you look smart too.
Yeah, I do think that's essential, especially thinking about the internship, because I'm also a product of an internship. The Maryland General Assembly offers college students internships with the delegates and the state senators. And I know that pretty much changed my whole mindset of how I view politics, and it influenced me to want to get more involved with a lot of the issues that deal with social injustices across the country. Because I realized that a lot of these issues that we face in our communities easily get changed by a sign of a pen. And that's why it's important to know your elected officials and what they stand for and how are they going to represent you. And I think that's one of the reasons why we're having this Q&A, because we understand in previous years the youth have been underrepresented and underserved, and that's very inequitable to me, because our voices matter just as much as anybody else. So I do think that you all, especially everyone who helped champion the internship program this summer, you all did a great job with that, because you probably changed all of those kids' lives without even knowing you. So that's great.
So I'm gonna move
Akil,
on.
yeah. I was gonna say, you got your next question for him?
Yes. Okay. So the citizens of Annapolis know that Annapolis is very diverse. When tourists come to Annapolis, they may not see that. So how could you in your office make the diversity of the city shown to all?
I think this city was built on the backs of minorities. This city's industry was, I know it's your granddad's quote, but I love quoting it. There was a time when a man with a small boat and a big heart could make a living from City Dock in Annapolis and go out to the Chesapeake Bay and come back with a catch and make a good living for his family. That's part of the personality of this city. But I agree with you. It is not represented downtown. Before my time, there were plenty of diverse businesses on Main Street. I was really troubled to see a headline, or not a headline, but a quote in the paper the other day that said we lost, and he was an amazing person, but we lost the only African-American, or the first African-American business on Main Street. We all know that is not true. We know the stories from your parents, from your grandparents. But if you went there today, you would think that is the case, right? So I say we have to be intentional about that too. We have to try to get more representation, more minority businesses, more younger businesses. I say this all the time, like helping young entrepreneurs is a huge priority for us, because young people are fearless. They try different things. They're not afraid of failing in a business. And when you get a bit older, you take less risks in life. So I actually think during COVID this year, it's the most diverse that I've seen City Dock, because people were trying to get out. So I'm not sure, but I saw motorcycle riders, I saw bikers, I saw people with their families. I felt like it looked a little different to what it has. And so I want to make sure that we continue those things after COVID. But The only way that's going to happen is to make it relevant to the people that we want to attract here. So if there's not the businesses that you like, if there's not the vibe you like, or whatever it is, or if you don't feel welcome, you're not going to come. So I want to make sure that we make sure that we address that when we rebuild City Dock. We're about to do the city's largest municipal project in its history, $50 million to build a garage and raise City Dock and create a park instead of a parking lot. That park is going to be a great community space where people can come together. I believe good public space or good community space builds good community. And so when we make a park that speaks to everybody's history, not just a certain segment of the population's history, and is inviting and is cool, it has to be cool. It has to have like some cool energy to it. We will get the sort of city that I'm looking for us all to live in, and we will attract cooler younger businesses, and with all that, everything will fall in place. And so we're heading in that direction now. Not only will we make sure that we create a kind of space that I'm talking about, but when we're constructing it, we have to make sure that people from the community help to construct it. We have to create community jobs when that happens, because I look at those old pictures of the Brooklyn Bridge and the guys up there building that bridge. I mean, if your granddad built that bridge, you would have told everyone their whole life, hey, my granddad built this bridge, And so it should be the same when we do this big project at City Dock. Community people should be involved in its construction. They'll take ownership of it. They'll be proud of it, and they'll spend time there, and that's where I'm trying to head with that. Just that one project. We have multiple other projects around the city like that, but that's going to be a huge one for Annapolis.
I just had an add-on question to that. You were talking about the diverse leaders in the city. How could you use those diverse leaders in the city to promote unity and diversity within the city?
So I think that, we were all there for the first Black Lives Matter march. This one, not the last one. I was there on the last one, but the most recent, the George Floyd one, and all of our diverse leaders were there at that moment. I like to think I was the first mayor in the country to take a knee when we were out on Forest Drive. I made sure that I did anything I could to facilitate those marches, whether it was a sound system or an escort at a distance, people being respectful, a stage, a place to paint a mural, a projection screen, seats if some older people were at some of the marches, all those things that we did to make a statement about who this city was. I was very proud at the same time at that moment in history, which is the game-changing moment, I really believe, of your generation. And I'm proud to be just a little bit part of it. We all want to be part of something that's bigger than ourselves. I got a lot of press in Australia for just being there, so thank you. That when those marches were happening, people were marching, and there were people marching the other direction with Reopen Maryland philosophies, which were, more not believing in the science, not, wanted us to open and more Trumpy, I would say. So, I had to sort of navigate these different interests and make sure that we didn't have clashes, right? But what I thought was really great for our city is, as we marched up Main Street, there were rainbow flags on the lamppost that showed that we were an inclusive city, that we were a diverse city, and I'm very proud of how all the protesters conducted themselves. Like we needed, everyone needed to be heard, but we only point to the bad situations where there was some destruction. How many protests happened in this region, and not one bit of destruction happened. Everybody was respectful and was upset, justifiably upset, but they were not, we didn't see the things that happened in other cities, because everybody conducted themselves well and needed to be heard, and we let people be heard. And I didn't, we saw so many mayors in those situations decide they were going to bust heads. That has never worked in history. Anyone who has done that in history has been on the wrong side of history, and we made sure that we weren't. And our police chief took a knee, all those sorts of things. So,
That's cool. So that actually kind of just motivated me to ask this question. So how do you think the Black Lives Matter protests and everything that was going on in the country, with George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, helped change your leadership?
So we were going to come out with a civilian review board, move forward on that. And I probably moved it forward quicker than I thought I would move it forward. We knew we always had to deal with the police officers' Bill of Rights situation, all that on a state level. So it had to be coordinated with that. But I think we came out earlier on that. And I definitely know that this has led to reform all over the country. And police reform, is not a thing that is easy, right? It is a thing that this is a system that hasn't changed for a long time. I believe, generally our department, it does the best they can, right? But they don't really realize that in community policing you have to put the community first, right? And so we had already moved in that direction by getting rid of our last police chief and bringing in a police chief that understood the need for community policing. So we were ahead of that situation. We already have body cameras on our police officers. We are going to have our civilian review board in place before many parts of the country, but we are also mindful that a civilian review board without any kind of modification to the police officers' Bill of Rights does not have a lot of power. And so, but I think that, I think the writing is on the wall for that at this legislative session. I think we're going to move forward. I believe we're going to create a good model or a great model for this country on how to truly put the community first in policing and build a trust up in the community, because that's been the problem, right? People are scared. Young people are scared of police officers. It shouldn't be that way. They should see them as someone that can help them when they need it. But they shouldn't be afraid of what's going to happen. And parents shouldn't be afraid of just letting their kids out of the house at night or letting their kids drive the car, all that sort of stuff. So.
Cool. I appreciate that. I think it's on you right now.
Okay. So how can you and your office ensure that the jobs in Annapolis will be able to fulfill the financial costs that come with living in Annapolis?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's one of the biggest challenges I'm going to have as a mayor, and that's one of the biggest challenges in the city. Housing affordability. I want my kids to be able to one day buy a house in this town. I want you guys to be able to buy houses and help me change, affect the agenda here, but it's becoming extremely every day it gets further and further out of our reach. So Alderman Gay is working with a great team on a housing task force. We have to come up with a model for affordable housing in this city. I believe we have good opportunities for it, for mixed income housing, affordable housing, artists, lofts, things like that keep creative people here. But that is one of the biggest things. And then we have to have a living wage. You have to have a $15 at least living wage to live in a city like this. So, I'm a big believer in that. As we phase it in, whichever way we end up getting there, it has to be across the board. Everybody has to do it. It can't just be a couple of people, because then, other people take advantage of those situations. But affordable housing is one of the most important things that we can do for this city. The disturbing statistic I just got the other day is the largest growing group in the city of Annapolis is people 65 years and older. So 38% growth in the last year. So that is a massive growth. So, and I love old people. I am one. But it can't just be a city full of old people. We need young people. We need middle-aged people, and we need them to be able to afford to live in the city. So we're going to push through for some initiatives for affordable housing and a few different opportunity sites around the city.
All right.
I'm actually happy that you asked that question, because it kind of throws the alley-oop to my next question. It's amazing to have a house, but we also have to ensure that the house that people are living in, are safe and healthy. So, how is the city going to ensure that the quality of life issues, poor water quality, mold, and other health-related issues, are eradicated in the future? Because we know that this impacts the youth and children who suffer with asthma a lot. So, what are you all plans to change that in the future? So, neighborhoods like Robinwood and Eastport don't go through these.
I think the real villain in this situation for public housing is HUD, right? We've had a federal organization that has walked away from public housing. My mum lived in public housing, and it was great. She had a garage, she had 2-story, it was an awesome thing. What we've done here is we've slowly defunded public housing. And then as the housing got older, we gave the public housing organization less money. So you have less money, but you have more things to do, right? And so, my goal and if I can, do this in 2 terms in office, is to rebuild or be on track to rebuild everything. We can't keep band-aiding Robinwood or Harbour House or Eastport Terrace. You can only slap a bit of paint on and clean the mold off, and then it's going to come back in those buildings. They're past their usable life. They need to be replenished and rebuilt, and we can do great things. I take people from the community and councillors on road trips before COVID to rebuilds in DC and Baltimore and Ellicott City to see what the potential is. We have amazing potential. We could have the best public housing in the country, right? If we really put our mind to it, because we have a great sites. Everything in this town is very walkable. I'm working on a big initiative to connect all of our communities right now, so that instead of having to drive downtown, you could think about getting on an electric scooter or a bike or walking. In 8 square miles, everything is close. So connecting those communities and exposing people to those communities is something we're all working on in this office.
Yeah, appreciate that answer. Yeah, I know. No comments. Akil, you have anything to say to that?
No, I have another question though. Since we're on a peninsula surrounded by the Chesapeake Bay, what can Annapolis do to expand its water accessibility to youth and its citizens who don't live in water-privileged communities?
So I said this earlier on today that my kids, when they're at Annapolis Elementary, and I would be the parent there on swim and drown proofing, right? I come from Australia originally, right? Everybody can swim when they're like, tiny, because we're surrounded by water. But I was shocked when I would be at these swim lessons and half the kids couldn't swim. I know there was a time when all the kids did was jump off a pier and fish and swim and laugh and all those sorts of things. But slowly, it seems in this area, we privatized our waterfront, and the access to waterfront diminished. And so what I will promise you is that every bit of waterfront that is publicly owned will stay publicly owned, and will be accessible. And we're working on some very exciting projects now. We are working on Hawkins Cove, which is the waterfront below in the back of the Hacker offices. We will do a living shoreline there. We'll do a park there. We'll do a pier there, and then we'll dredge a channel so that you can get a water taxi there. It is slowly silted in, so it's really too shallow to get a water taxi in or a fishing boat or anything now. But when we finished, you'll be able to get on that pier, call a water taxi and go downtown or come home that way. Or, for kids, we do fishing camps, they'll be able to pick kids up from that fishing camp, from that location. We are working on trying to save the last piece of Cars Beach now. There is an amazing developer who I tell everyone about, Theo Rogers, who has a project for 40 units, but he is willing to take a look at maybe selling that land to the city at the right price so that we can save a piece of what is this amazing history in this town. I'm not from here, but as soon as I learned about Cars Beach and all that exciting stuff that happened here, and the fact that for 3 decades, the coolest people in the planet used to come and play the beach here, and how cool that must have been. I've been singing it from the rooftops. So if we get a chance to save a last piece of Sparrows Beach, it's kind of in the general vicinity, and actually make it a beach and make it a dedication to the history, that will be some other amazing water access. If you go out to Waterworks Park now, that is a big piece of land that the city owns behind PetSmart. It's in the county, but it's 600 acres of land that the city owns. There is an amazing dam there. You could only go to that park before if you had a license. I think there were less than 100 licenses, and they were expensive. They were, over $100 when you got the parking and the fishing permit at the same time. We opened that up. We cut a whole bunch of trails in there. Now you can walk into that park from Housley Road or from I think it's General's Highway over there, and you can go in and you can use this park, walk around the dam. It's beautiful. Walk up to the solar park. We have we have lots of the new swimming pool, I say, is water access. We have a brand new swimming pool, slides and all that sort of stuff that are fantastic. We have probably 4 or 5 other places that I could point to you in the city that we're working on water access on, but that has to be important to us. It is very important to me because the water is a big part of our identity as a city. It's a reason why many of us live here. We have this amazing body of water, and some kids have never been on it. So I'm working to change that. If you look at what we programmed out of the Birders House this year, we did this year and last year, we had tons of kids getting on the water, going on sailboats for the first time, going on power boats for the first time. And it was just exciting to see kids and their faces, and hopefully some of that will lead to some maritime jobs or a passion for that. If you looked at the Lynx boat that just came in when Travis Pastrana was doing that jump across Ego Alley, I don't know if you went to that Lynx boat, but it's got this super cool captain who's got this cool ass throw, and he looks like a pirate, and he's like, he's African American. He's this cool dude. If kids get to see a guy like that, they're like, I could be the captain of this boat, So it's a huge priority for me, and we work on it every day. So
I'm kind of happy that you mentioned Cars Beach because I always think that story is part of the forgotten history of Annapolis, especially Black history. Learning about Fort Ward and what it used to be, Ernest T. Allen, Wally H. Bates, all of these great individuals. My question is, what are your plans on ensuring that not only the community, but when tourists come here, they're aware of the forgotten Black history and what Annapolis has done to the Black communities and how we were thriving and what has happened through eminent domain gentrification. What are you all plans, especially since it's Black History Month? I thought it was imperative to access. What are y'all plans in the future to help promote and propagate that history as much as we propagate how George Washington and all of the previous presidents came to Annapolis, stuff like that. So how are we going to help ensure that everyone is aware of every group that stepped in Annapolis and lived in Annapolis history.
So, making a priority of it is the most important thing. So I'm from Australia. Everybody knows the Kunta Kinte story around the world, right? We have this amazing story that happened right here. Um, more people should know that. This should be the best side trip from Washington, D.C. People should want to come and learn that story and confront the story. I believe we can never heal as a country until we truly confront slavery, until we truly acknowledge that is what built our country, and then not to just focus on that, but focus on this international port where people came from the islands. Free black men came to this town and made their fortune in a kind of a Hamilton way. I don't know enough about the history to know that, but came here for opportunity, right? We are working on a renovation of the Banniker Douglas house, which is just over the road from City Hall. This was a prosperous African American tradesman who had a house within sight of the State House. You must have to have been pretty affluent to have a house there in that time. Frederick Douglass, having a house just near Carr's Beach and near that area. I mean, that in Highland Beach, that we should be celebrating these amazing historic moments that have occurred in this city, and they should be part of the fabric more. I don't believe we have made it a priority. We are planning on making it a priority when we reimagine City Dock, when we build a public park there. We know we just got designated as one of the cities that was on the Middle Passage. We have to talk about that. We have to acknowledge that, the lives that were lost, the horror of it, but also the fact that, slaves built our state not only our state capital, but our capital in Washington, D.C., and then an African American man and his wife became the president of this country. That sometimes people knock America when I'm overseas for different things, but I mean, we that's a pretty amazing thing that happened in this country when you consider the country's history and the dark the shameful things that have happened. That was an amazing moment, and the whole world celebrated that. It led to a dark moment, but we've just got through that. So I am optimistic about the future, and I think that young people are the future, and they're not going to conduct themselves that way.
Thank you. I appreciate that, and I'm sure a lot of viewers appreciate that brief history lesson because history needs to be known, And when I heard about it, it helped change my life because I was just amazed with so much important history that Annapolis has, and everyone should know that. So Akil, your turn, my guy. Blow us away.
So bring it back to what we talked about in the beginning. You were talking about how 38, it was a growth of 30% of 65 and older in the city. So my next question would be, as many teens in Annapolis say there isn't much to do here, and do you agree? And if so, what could be done about it?
The point that I made is that you have to make the city relevant to young people. So if it's not cool, if there's not something to do, they're not going to want to be there, right? If it's not the music you want to hear. I can say before I became a mayor, I have a music venue on West Street, and you could go there one night and you could hear hip hop, but you could go there another night and you could hear bluegrass, So we tried to get a lot of people under one roof. I've done music festivals in this town that did the same thing, tried to have a diversity in music. I hope in 2 terms to have an identifying music festival in this town. This town has musical roots that any town in America would kill for, right? And when you truly tell that story of from Sarah Vaughan to Stevie to whoever, the fact that the coolest people in the planet, like you hear me say a million times, the Jay-Z of his day, James Brown, coming here, hanging with Hoppy Adams, loving his time in Annapolis, and talking about his time in Annapolis around the world. And then you take that and take the fact that the guy that started Atlantic Records and Elektra Records, which led to None Such, went to school in Annapolis. We know they were listening to WANN, which was the radio station, I believe, with the second largest listenership in the country in its day. So the second largest African-American listenership in America was happening in this area, because this was where the cool stuff was happening, where, you know, even in the middle of segregation, you know, white boys that went to the Naval Academy were trying to tune in their transistor radios so they could listen to the cool music, because they didn't have to listen to the Lawrence Welk channel or whatever was happening back then. You know, I mean, we have coolness here, but it's been swept under the rug, right? So we have to bring that history, that cool history, to the front. We have to talk about the history of, you know, the success of people like Frederick Douglass and just down the road, Thurgood Marshall, things, you know, like you know, the amazing game-changing people from this region, and celebrate them and attach them to the city whenever we can, and then that stuff makes the city cooler, right? It makes it real. It gives it true roots. And then I think, you know, then it makes it more relevant to kids. And so we're working on that slowly. But I feel like we're getting there, you know.
My next question is that, so, you know, this year, you know, we all realize that COVID has highlighted the disparities for real. And we realize that a lot of families do not have Wi-Fi, you know, and with learning, Wi-Fi is a necessity. So does the city have any beneficial programs such as Wi-Fi hotspots or broadband that will be put in place after the pandemic in the future to ensure that, you know, all of the families have equity and they have a chance to, you know, get on the laptop and do their work via Wi-Fi and email their teachers? So is there any future plans for that?
So when the pandemic hit, we realized immediately, and we moved immediately to create a program that would supply what you needed to get Wi-Fi in the community. So we moved really early on that, because it doesn't matter how many Chromebooks you have. If you don't have Wi-Fi, what good is your Chromebook, right? And then when everything is shut down, there's no library to go to, there's no other places to go to. So we made sure that we jumped on that really, really early. We are going to continue that, because I think that is essential. But it can't just be, you know, a temporary thing. If we truly want to be a city of the future, then we have to make sure that we become a smart city. I am very connected to BG&E, and they roll me out as a progressive mayor, as a mayor that is a good mayor to work with. They are using a lot of the city to put in new technologies. I'm planning on leveraging that relationship to make sure that we get good capacity. You know, I know all we hear about is 5G on the TV. We see it on the TV, but we don't actually see it on our phones. That's the way it feels like to me. You know, a lot of 5G advertising, but no real 5G in my hand. You know, but you know, we've got a 8 square mile area, and if we really map it out, I really truly think that we can get there when the technology's available. One of the things is the territorial nature of that sort of stuff. You know, you have a Comcast box and then a Verizon box and another box, and then you have to do another one 2 blocks away. So I'm hoping that get some modification in that so that we can do that. But we have a good council now that really understands that. Brooke Schandelmeyer is looking seriously at the initiatives in Chattanooga that they have done on Wi-Fi and just been a complete city with free Wi-Fi for everybody. I love that idea. I think there's going to be federal money coming to us soon. This president has realized that municipalities, we're a sort of a business. We have revenue, and then we have expenses, and our revenue was decimated last year in so many ways with the shutdown. And so I think we're going to get some kind of federal funding to sort of fill that gap in, and we're going to be able to apply that to making our cities smarter, because and what we've realized now out of the pandemic is that everybody can work from home now, right? That city that we thought we were going to get, or that country we thought we were going to get, is actually possible. Not as many people are going to have to drive to work. I love it. You're going to be able to work from your home office, and then you're going to be able to go out in the middle of the day and get on a bike and go for a ride or go for a run or something like that. I think that makes you a better employee, but that means that you have to have the infrastructure in place so that we can accommodate that. I don't understand why we couldn't. We have the newest state-of-the-art facility at the U.S. Naval Academy, that cybersecurity place. I mean, that should be part of our brand. We've got all these super smart people coming out of the academy, and cyber warfare, cyber security, that is a huge thing that we're going to have to contend with as we move forward in the world. So I think there's a lot of potential for that, and I'm going to be pushing hard for it.
Thank you. Akil?
Yes. How will you boost civic engagement within the youth in the city? How will you get kids more involved in our local government?
Well, I'm going to start with this call right here. So a lot of people think that local politics doesn't matter. And I said to you, Akil, before, when I ran, people were like, oh, don't worry about young people. They don't show up. Millennials will break your heart. Don't put your energy there, put it somewhere else. I didn't. I made sure that I got young people out. I got more people under 25 to show up for our election than in the history of the city. And I truly believe we need young people on council. I'm a big supporter of Dewan's. We need young voices. You've heard me say this before. If you don't have a seat at the table, you're on the menu. And so old guys, sometimes we're making decisions for your generation, and you probably know what's better for you than me in many cases, right? So young people need to get involved in local politics. And I really do think that from Black Lives Matter, there's been so much more activism than I've ever seen in this city. And it's really exciting. It's really organic. And people are holding politicians accountable and demanding things. And that's how you make change happen, right? You can put 100 requests into Washington, D.C., and you might never see anything change, but you can put enough pressure on locally, and you can actually feel and see the change happen, because that's the way it works in local politics. So you've had an effect on this city, and you're going to have much more effect on the city. Your initiative at the school was an amazing example of that. The community getting behind, but somebody had to draw attention to it, and we think it's amazing that you do that. But this is where you make change happen.
Thank you so much for saying that. Because working with a lot of youth, including myself, sometimes we feel as though our work goes unnoticed. We all can agree, the Black Lives Matter protest that happened this summer, it sparked all of the conversation, most of the conversations that we needed to have. It encouraged a lot of young people to emerge from the shadows and use their voice as a weapon for good. And I thought that was amazing. That's one of the reasons how I met Akil. That's how you and I created a great relationship, Mayor Buckley. So I can say this summer in Annapolis, it changed a lot. It was almost as if we were a blueprint to a lot of communities, watching murals like Breonna Taylor and George Floyd, us making Time Magazine, CNN, the Democratic National Convention. I also had to shout out, Jeff Huntington, Carmen Brown, D. Ward, because their artwork was amazing. It helped motivate us in the time of darkness. So with all that being said, unfortunately, we're coming to an end. Do you two have any last comments before we wrap this up for the viewers?
No, I just can't wait to see what Annapolis is going to look like today, tomorrow, and into the future. Because it's just so much positivity in Annapolis that if we can harvest it and we all unite together, we can make some huge changes on a local level, nationally, and across the world.
And I think, we have so much talent here, right? We have so many smart people. And for a long time, the people that have been driving the bus in this city have not had time for anyone to be on that bus that doesn't look like them or doesn't think like them. But I think it's a new day. I really do think that now, step aside, because there's a new generation, and they're not going to stand for being marginalized. They're going to be listened to. They're going to have good ideas for the city. And we live in a great place. We are all very lucky to live in this city. I'm so proud. I have to pinch myself every now and then that I get to be mayor of this great city. But you can still improve it. You can still do things to make it better without compromising what makes it so special, right? So you just have to sort of have different priorities, and they can all coexist. And I really do think that we are moving away on mobility. I just want to say real quickly, we are working really hard to connect this city through a thing called the AMP program. It's the Annapolis Alternative Mobility Plan, and that AMP program will create trails and ferries that you can get on your bike and get on a ferry and get across. We have all this water around us, but no one thought to sort of use that as a transportation mode, right? So if we work on micro transit, if we all, I'll take you guys for a bike ride. Commissar loved it last time I took him out there. He's still talking about it. And you'll see the connections that we're trying to make in this city, and that when we finish those connections, we're going to make this city a city that cares about decarbonizing, that cares about not making it auto-centric, but making it people-centric, and making that kind of transport alternative the preferred option, and that makes for a cleaner and better city. And then I always, when and I'm going to do a big environmental announcement tomorrow, but when I see people standing up against these initiatives, I ask them, do they not have kids? Do they not have grandkids? Do they not have to think like, well, what am I going to leave for my grandkid? It amazes me sometimes, but I want to make sure that this city's identity is rooted in caring about the next generation and the environment. So thank you.
Appreciate that. So it's about 8 o'clock now. So I think we still have a little bit more time. Do you all want to take questions from the comments?
Sure. No problems. Yeah.
All right. So we just got one that said, how can we use youth and young adults to drive our future and environmental sustainability while also providing resources and power and wealth? People of color are significantly underrepresented in environmental and natural-based career and activities. How can we start an initiative to grow an outdoor generation in Annapolis that seeks to fundamentally change this dynamic?
I agree with you. It is sadly lacking diversity so often when I go to environmental events. I always point to an initiative that happened behind Harbour House. A couple of years ago, they did a $2 million restoration of that area. It's beautiful. They did an amazing job. Everything was great. But then when they finished the project, they reached out to the head of Hacker there and said, can we put a sign up that says, hey, we just did this beautiful $2 million restoration. And then the head of Hacker said, sure, as long as I can put a sign next to your sign that says, during this $2 million renovation, not one community job was created. And it was a missed opportunity. We had a chance to get kids involved in building it, right? To get them to sort of touch and feel it and take ownership of it. And that was a missed opportunity on the environment. I'm going to make sure when we redo Hawkins Cove Living Shoreline that there's very much community involvement in that initiative. And so, you know, I say this: you can't fight for something unless you touch it and feel it. You know, and so getting kids, getting young people engaged in environmental initiatives has to be a high priority. I'm working. You know, I love AOC's Green New Deal ideas. You know, I'd like to do our own kind of green WPA here, where we maybe get initiative working that we're talking about called Trailblazers, where we get kids building trails with us, or young people building, young people building trails with us, young people working on sort of cleanups in areas, making them taking the trash out of areas so that we can make them a public place, and definitely engaging them in any opportunity that we can get. So we are working on a few of these ideas now, and they should sort of flush out as this year progresses.
All right. Appreciate that. You have any comments on that, Akil?
No, but there's another question. Why is the city not engaging in more marine technology businesses to make Annapolis more attractive to corporate headquarters?
Marine businesses?
Marine technology businesses to make Annapolis more attractive to corporate headquarters.
Yeah, I would, obviously, we want employers to move here. I think we need to do a better job. We call ourselves the sailing capital or the boating capital of America, but a lot of the times we're not putting investment into it. So we're working now on kind of reimagining the maritime zoning in the area so that we can sort of open it up maybe to a little more tech, and realizing that tech is, you know, has to be the future. That some of the more traditional things have moved away. You know, I'm a big supporter of the boat show. It's a big part of our identity. You know, it's a big employer when it happens. But I think, you know, skills on that front should be a priority, and we do need to do better to get people connected to that. Yeah.
I think that's it.
Yeah, it is it. Besides the one saying, "Who's your favorite older person?"
Did the one say that?
That the people wants to know.
I love them all.
Yeah, I do think that's the last of the last questions. I don't see any more put into our Zoom chat. So I want to thank you, Akil, for helping me co-host this, man. You were a huge help. I truly appreciate it, man. I can't wait to see what you're going to bring in the future. I want to thank you again, Mayor Gavin Buckley, for giving the youth a voice and allowing us to have this panel, to have this type of discussion, so we can create some type of transparency, we can get some type of understanding with one another. So I appreciate both of you for helping, and I appreciate the tech team for making this possible. You guys were amazing. And I appreciate everyone who joined this Zoom call on Facebook and watched this whole conversation. You guys are amazing as well. So that being said, thank you, everybody, and have a great night.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you for what you do. Thank you so much.